Hello, my name is Dr. Cheryl Burdett, and I'm with Precision Point Diagnostics. I wanted to share with you an exciting opportunity that's coming up. It's called Mapping the Road Ahead, and on February 20th, which is a Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern, we're going to be walking through what we know about COVID at this point, what we know about that group called the long haulers who are continuing to have challenges, and what we need to do around vaccines in terms of making sure they work optimally and also minimizing side effects. So this is sponsored by Precision Point, and this is 1.5 hours of CME credit. And because they are sponsoring it, it is $15 to do if you register now. If you wait until after the 20th, then it'll be $35. But I wanted to say thank you to Precision Point for making this CME opportunity available. And we're really going to dive into what we need to know to manage patient care in 2021. And as I have begun to really dissect the research and what we're thinking about and what's going on, I am just really reminded how important it is to do a thorough workup right now. This is how we're going to catch abnormalities. If we're worried about the rare incidence of somebody having an extreme side effect, there was probably something going on in their system already. And our routine screening will go a long way to capture that and to make sure that we are treating safely. Also, it gives us the window to see where our patients are weak right now. And if we're talking about decreasing the spread of a virus, this becomes very important. Precision's Wellness Panel is extremely useful here because, first of all, you are going to not only see things like lipids, but oxidized LDL. When there's more oxidized LDL, this means there's more damage to microcirculation. What we are learning is that COVID is not a lung disorder or a kidney disorder or a brain disorder, but a microcirculatory disorder. And when the circulation is impaired, then we will see organ distress. When oxidized LDL goes up, it is associated with impairment in microcirculation, impairment in the vessels, a great marker to be looking at right now. Of course, things like glucose will also damage our endothelium. Things like uric acid, we know, go up even before glucose changes. And so it's a sign of more oxidative stress on the body. I want you to be thinking about markers such as albumin. Normally, we're thinking about this in terms of, when we think about it more in terms of functionally, we're thinking about when that drops, that being more of an issue in terms of protein status. But in this case, when you see albumin start to drift towards the bottom, that can be a sign of microcirculatory issues. Your vessels are becoming leaky, and we need to treat this in order to make the patient able to withstand COVID more. We know that there are some markers that will continue to go up when we are in the when we see that our risk factors, things like AST, have been pointed to. Also, GGT, yes, goes up when there's too much alcohol, but also goes up when the body is trying to produce glutathione. If you do not have adequate glutathione stores, you are more at risk for a cytokine storm. Of course, we need to be getting a picture of vitamin D. In my talk, I'm going to reference the research that talks about how higher levels of vitamin D are not only protective for COVID, but do amazing things in terms of how our body receives a vaccine, helping us to make more antibodies, but the appropriate type, and really decreasing cross-reactivity, decreasing the idea decreasing the possibility that we'll have more auto reactions. The other things that we want to think about on our wellness panel, interestingly, even though what we see is that we do see that we are looking at, on this wellness panel, a complete thyroid profile. A note of something positive when they looked at antibodies in the serum post-COVID, and not only looked at antibodies specific to COVID, but looked at other antibodies like autoimmune, ANA, rheumatoid factor, the antibodies that go up with lupus, what they found is you did not see an increase in antibodies attacking the thyroid. So phew, that's a bit of some good news in terms of what we're seeing post-COVID. An example of some of the trends that we'll cover in the lecture that that we'll be doing on February 20th. Also, of course, hemoglobin A1C. We know one of the big deals with long-term COVID is that neuroinflammation, inflammation to the brain. And if we see a hemoglobin A1C above a 5.2, this becomes the area that we're more concerned about in terms of having issues with the brain shrinking and being more susceptible to neurologic inflammation because of COVID. Other markers like magnesium will always be important to us. Remember that the wellness profile also goes into details about levels of oxidative stress. When we have a higher 8-OHDG, we are more likely to produce more cytokines. We are more likely to be in that position of a cytokine storm. Also, that becomes true in terms of looking at our levels of glutathione. We know that glutathione is one of the major protective pieces in terms of reducing that oxidative stress and protecting us from a cytokine storm. We know that in addition to that, things like cholesterol, when cholesterol is elevated, it serves as a raft for COVID. It will deliver more COVID to the angiotensin receptors. And so not only is this a good idea to be looking at in terms of reducing cardiovascular disease, but particularly in terms of minimizing risk of COVID. We know that lipids in general can be a risk factor. We want to be checking things like fibrinogen. Those who have a higher level of fibrinogen are more likely to have a progressive COVID because you're clotting more. And what we've learned is that this is a clotting disorder. So a good wellness panel can give us a window into all of these things that we know are risk factors. Now is the time to take an assessment. Now is the time to see where your patient is at, because now is the time that we can do things to build them up and to help to reduce a worst case scenario. So I look forward to diving into this topic with you on February 20th, 11 a.m. Eastern time to 1 a.m. And we're going to walk through importance of testing. We're going to look at where COVID really attacks us, and we're going to look at what we need to do to help our patients stay safe from COVID and to get the best outcomes from vaccines without causing any undue side effects. Thanks for joining me. Thanks to Precision for supporting this. And because of that sponsorship, that's why you're seeing that reduced rate if you do register before the 20th. I look forward to talking to you then. Take care.